Fantasy scoring was down, way down in the wide receiver apocalypse in week 11. Nick and I are going to break it all down for you coming up on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the good folks from No House Advantage. Jeff Erickson here with Nick Whalen. Nick, it was a sloppy week 11. A lot of low scores, especially in the early window. A lot of good players on bye, other good players hurt, and other elite players doing nothing. Just all around, I saw a lot of low fantasy scores, except for the leagues where I was going up against Tony Pollard.
Yeah, that was about the only real bright spot. I was just looking at a league where I have 61.6 points, and I'm going to win comfortably in that league, which is not something you can say very often.
And that's not a touchdown-only league or anything like that then?
No, this is just kind of your run-of-the-mill ESPN league. Yeah, like you said, I mean, just almost no offense, in that Jets-Patriots game. Did not have an offensive touchdown there. Eagles-Colts was low-scoring. Bills came alive in the second half, but even that one was off to a slow start. I mean, really, like you said, other than Tony Pollard, other than Jamal Williams, a pretty quiet day all around. Big day for Joe Burrow, though, as well, and your Cincinnati Bengals winning that game in Pittsburgh. That to me felt like it was becoming almost too much of a trap game, to the point where I kind of regretted taking the Steelers ATS in staff picks. But they put up a fight, and almost 70 total points between those two teams.
Steelers were winning at halftime. On their second interception, they had really good field position. They could have put themselves in a really good spot, but Bengals defense stiffened up in the second half quite a bit. I was on the Steelers on that one. I was wrong a lot in staff picks this week. So last week, I think I went 11-3. This week, I did not do that. My best bet was the Vikings. My second best bet was the Giants. It was bad. It was bad all around, Nick.
Well, my best bet was the Giants as well. And we had Scott Pianowski on the XM show on Wednesday, chatted with him about that. Both him and Jim Coventry were, they loved it. They were like, oh yeah, of course, Giants shouldn't be only 3-point favorites. They're at home against the Lions. Lions have maybe been a little bit inflated with these back-to-back wins. Neither of them are really all that convincing. And yeah, to me, that was maybe the single most shocking result of the weekend. Obviously Dallas, 37-point victory on the road at Minnesota. That's almost in a category of its own. But the Giants getting smacked around, really never feeling like they were in that game at home against the Detroit Lions. That was a huge surprise.
Losing the physical battle, not being able to establish Saquon Barkley at all. Yep. That, to me, blew my mind. Let's start going through these games, and we'll start identifying a few of the things that caught our eye. Starting with the Thursday night game. So first of all, Nick, I know you were tailgating in Green Bay. Did you actually get yourself into the game?
I sure did. Thank you for asking. A friend of mine from high school and college, his parents had actually indoor club seats. So I was able to get my hands on one of those kind of last minute. Like I told you, last week, I was kind of scanning the market. Prices were way down. I was probably going to buy a ticket either way, but my good buddy Ben came through, and tailgating outside, tell you what, I was a little underdressed. I would say I handled the cold pretty well, but I'm glad I was sitting inside for that game, because I don't know if I would have lasted another 3 or 4 hours sitting out in the bowl. But man, disappointing game for the Green Bay Packers. I kind of talked myself into Green Bay winning this game. I took Tennessee to cover. They were 3-point dogs. I thought we'd get a really close game, and it felt like this game should have been closer. I mean, honestly, this was maybe the best game I can remember Ryan Tannehill playing. So you do have to tip your cap there. He was fantastic all night, but yet again, the Packers had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity in the second half. And when you have the 2-time reigning MVP, when you have the 4-time overall MVP, Super Bowl winner, Aaron Rodgers, you could say the defense had some letdowns, but you need to be able to outscore the Tennessee Titans at home. Like that's part of the deal when you have Aaron Rodgers on your team. And man, it felt like Green Bay took a major step back after that win over Dallas. And at this point, the season's over.
Yeah, they couldn't run the ball again.
No.
And I really do think that their offensive fortunes rise and fall with their ability to run. Aaron Jones, 12 for 40. A.J. Dillon, 6 for 13. It's more the same. The 2 previous weeks, they lost the loss against the Lions and then the win against the Cowboys. They ran well. They ran very well. They did not run so well Thursday. And then they started getting into a deficit. They also they did that thing just like they did in the London game, where instead of like they were making all this good incremental progress, and then nope, we're going to throw 4 outs. We're going to go we're just going to, I should say 4 verts, excuse me, not outs. Just 4th and 3, let's throw a vert to Lazard down the sideline. That's well covered. And that was kind of the game right there. It was like, you could have just kept the balls. You had plenty of time. Just get a first down. You didn't have to get the big play, but they kept trying for that. I don't know, Nick. It just, it's the reverse of what I usually think. I think sometimes teams are too cautious in their play calling. They're all too willing to just play for the glorious first down. But I think that the Packers ran the opposite of that. I mean, I think they started off the third quarter really well with this one drive where they were just getting little dinks and dunks and moving it down the field. And then they boom, they went into that whole we got to throw it way downfield now and all that. And it just didn't work. That's just not their game this year.
It's been something I think that is emblematic of Aaron Rodgers, especially late career, is the notion of trying to get it all back on one play. Games where Green Bay gets punched in the mouth, they very rarely punch back. If you look at a lot of their big wins over the years, whether it's regular season or in the playoffs, it's games that they get out to a lead and they could build on that lead. They've kind of always been a front running team. And when they fall behind, they just don't know what to do. They do not know what to do. They feel like every drive feels like, unless we score here, it's over. And that's kind of the mentality on the field. And, the final 4 drives of this game for Green Bay, 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt, 4-and-out on downs. And then you go out on downs again late in the fourth quarter. At that point, you're talking about 2 minutes left in the game, down 2 scores. So a little bit of a desperation situation, but the defense stepped up when it needed to. Forced 2 punts and an interception late in this game.
And a 4th down stuff of Derrick Henry. Let's not forget that too. Exactly. And Derrick Henry, they committed to stopping him. His longest run was 9 yards. He averaged 3.1 yards per carry. They still ran it 28 times and had an 11-minute drive. They were able to do their thing, but they said, okay, well, we're going to make Ryan Tannehill beat us. Ryan Tannehill played really well, although he did throw a pick. He did have 3 sacks. So, you could look at it from both viewpoints there. But, Tannehill had a really solid, efficient game, 22 of 27 for 333. We finally saw Treylon Burks have a big game. And, granted, 51 yards at the end padded the stats of that game. Brilliant play call, by the way. Just ended the game. But even before that, it was 6 for 60. That was pretty productive. He was available for free in the RotoWire Stake League. I picked him up. Of course, I didn't start him, so I'm going to probably lose. Yeah. But anyhow, so I'm the hero and villain in the same story all of a sudden there. But going forward, I like Treylon Burks. I think he's a guy, another rookie receiver that's getting more share. He probably won't go for 100 every week or anything like that, but the same, because especially that's just not the way Tennessee plays. And I know against Cincinnati, they're going to want to run the ball a ton this upcoming week, but still very promising to see him get involved in the mix. It just changes this offense.
Yeah, they desperately need some sort of playmaker, alongside Robert Woods, who even calling him a playmaker at this point might be a little generous. But you talk about Tannehill, the accuracy was there downfield, especially in tough conditions in Lambeau, kind of had some light snow, some wind throughout the entire game. Didn't seem to faze him whatsoever. If anything, it was Rodgers who was affected by it in that second half. But the big plays for Tennessee through the air, that to me is what stuck out. It's not like Ryan Tannehill was just completing these 4-yard outs and doing what he needed to do. These were high-level downfield throws. Tennessee had 4 different players have a longer reception than anyone on the Packers had all night. They had 4 different players with a 30-plus yard reception. Right. It was just big play after big play after big play, and it felt like a lot of those were coming on third downs. It's 3rd and 1, and it's one thing to give up a 2-yard rush to Derrick Henry. Okay, you reset, but it's all right, it's 3rd and 1. There's a 42-yarder to Derrick Henry on a screen pass. It was just the big plays for Green Bay's defense. I thought overall they played pretty well, holding Derrick Henry to 87 yards on 28 carries. You'll take that. But obviously, in retrospect, it kind of feels like maybe they sold out too hard to stop Derrick Henry and we're not prepared for this Tennessee pass game.
Right. The known passing threat, Derrick Henry with the Tebow pass. That was pretty funny. That was a cool play. Threw a good throw too. Yeah. Had a really good throw on that. And then, he had the 40+ yard reception. He's, doing his best Austin Eckler impersonation there. No, actually, he just went straight down the field. It was pretty crazy.
Much, yeah.
Yeah. Not a whole lot else to say. Just Mike Vrabel's a really darn good coach. and you underestimate him at your peril.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's at this point probably a top 5 coach in the NFL. I don't, anybody could debate that. It feels like week to week that changes, but in terms of maximizing the talent on the roster, I don't think anybody's done a better job over the last few years.
No, I don't think so either. So Bengals face the Titans this week. I'm really looking forward to that one. I have to cheat and look ahead at the line because I already said it in my own head. It's a pretty wide variance there, so I'm not even going to say what it is right now. There's like a gap of 4 points between like the most favorable to the Bengals versus the most favorable to the Titans. So, or if I'm reading that right, no, I don't think I am actually. I think it's just a 1 point variance. But regardless, I'm actually a little surprised at that line. So we'll see. I don't know. Have you seen that line yet?
I have. I looked over them this morning. I'm getting an early start on beating the book.
Makes sense
week,
with Thanksgiving
week.
With
the 4 games on Thanksgiving.
So I think Tennessee should be favored in this one.
I think so
and
too.
They are not. They're at home and they are a dog. I hate to be a self-hating Bengals fan, but I think Tennessee deserves to be favored at home here. I mean, I know it's not aesthetically pleasing, but they get the job done.
I agree. I mean, I think you could still say that the Bengals could win this game. Obviously they can. I don't think they deserve to be favored here. I don't think, that's too much to say. It's not disrespecting the Bengals in any way. I mean, the Titans are a very, very good team. They've shown that they can adapt to play against just about anybody. I mean, the Bills maybe are that one exception. If you look back to week 2, I do wonder, Jamar Chase, there's some inklings that maybe he could practice this week. I do wonder if that is baked into this line at all, but even so, I mean, I think if I was setting this line, I would go Titans -2, maybe at home. Titans 1.5.
I would have given them the standard 2.5, like they're two equal teams.
Yeah, I think that's
the
totally
way
fair.
I would have treated it.
Yeah.
We'll talk Bengals Steelers next. Get that, get in front of that. There it is, a Bengals win day after all. Joe Burrow does have more time to throw. He still gets hit, rushed at times. Did have 2 sacks. He's got an issue where he gets the balls tipped at the line of scrimmage. Both interceptions were a result of tips. One was a smother by TJ Watt, which was just an incredible play. But that is one downside. No Jamar Chase, no problem though. He averaged 9.1 yards per attempt. That is ridiculously efficient. 355 yards. He hadn't had one of those slate-breaking games without Chase prior to last night. And now he has 355 and 4 touchdowns. It was the Samaje Perine game. Who knew? The Trenton Irwin game, but T. Higgins went off, just didn't score. 6 different receivers had 20-plus receiving yards. I mean, he was just an all-around incredible offensive performance.
Yeah, I think for fantasy purposes, obviously Perine is the story there. 3 touchdowns through the air for him, 4 total for Burrow, who, by the way, 6 interceptions against the Steelers in 2 games, 2 against everybody else. So just some of that is a little fluky. Like you said, had some passes tipped in this game. And week 1, I mean, to me, that was just kind of a comedy of errors that I don't know if we'll see anything like that from Burrow again in his entire career.
And they still almost won.
Oh, exactly. They had multiple chances to win that game. I think if McPherson is on, they win that game probably in regulation. A frustrating day if you're a Joe Mixon owner, obviously. A couple weeks removed from his huge day. Tyler Boyd as well. I loved him. I had him in a couple DFS lineups. Turned out it was a T. Higgins day. Boyd really wasn't involved in this game at all until late. Did have 1 big catch.
2 big catches on that drive. They went a good long drive, got out of their deep end, and Boyd had both of his catches on that drive. They had him playing outside a lot more instead of playing in the slot. And I think that mattered a little bit, especially against the Steelers. I wouldn't read too much into that. He still had 7 targets in this game. It's just they could not stop T. Higgins, nor could they stop practice squad call-up Trenton Irwin, which, obviously is to be expected. Irwin, though, looked really good. He looked much better than their other options that they were trying to fool around and try to find as a third receiver while Chase is out. He'll by rule he has to go back, reverse to the practice squad, but I think he'll get called up full time by the Bengals. He looked the part.
Yeah, he just has like the classic white receiver look, the long hair. You're like, all right, I trust this guy. He looks like he's going to be tough. It feels like we've seen every team has gone through their iteration of Trenton Irwin, but yeah, he stepped up in a big way. I mean, like we said, huge day for T. Higgins. Didn't get in the end zone. That was a little frustrating, but it felt like, he was the go-to guy. These crossing routes time after time. He's wide open. He's running in space. I thought he was extremely dependable. A little bit of an inefficient day for Tyler Boyd. Did have 7 targets. Again, I don't think he had any catches in the first half. Hayden Hurst had a big catch early on, didn't really do a whole lot after that. And then Pittsburgh, I think the Steelers reaching 30 points in this game, that's what's most surprising. I think we thought this would be close. I thought, if anything, maybe this would be a game that Cincinnati wins or loses, like, 24-21, something like that. I didn't really see either team playing into the 30s or the high 30s in Cincy's case, but decent day for Kenny Pickett. Definitely has some sort of connection going with George Pickens. Still, a lot of shakiness overall with Kenny Pickett, but got to tip your cap. Didn't turn the ball over in this game. That's not something you can say week to week. And Pittsburgh has finally found a way to get Najee Harris going. And I don't know if it's ever going to be to the level that fantasy managers really want, but it looks a lot better now than it did the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
Yeah, and Pickett looked better than I've seen him so far. He also looked worse at times, if that makes sense. There's a couple of just badly missed throws. He did deserve a second touchdown. Pickens just had an ugly drop late in the game when they were down 2 scores. And Najee Harris ended up getting that touchdown instead. 2 different ways that Pickett should have gotten credit for that. There was another, on the previous play, Gunnar Olszewski comes back, makes this like circus tipped catch, gets down like on the inch line. So it's, it's not like it was wrongly called or anything, but it was just so close to Pickett getting the touchdown there. Could have been a much better fantasy day for him. They did these zone reads early on that were very effective against the Bengals. And the Bengals adjusted at halftime, as they had. When they're rolling well, their defense adjusts very well at halftime. And that's kind of what they did. First, 4 drives were barren wastelands for the Steelers. And not until the Bengals got up 37-23 did Pittsburgh really start moving the ball again. Kind of, wouldn't say garbage time, but it was really kind of garbage time. They had TJ Watt's great play and got stymied, got 5 yards, had to settle for a field goal. Another time, Pickens makes this circus catch. They get their first down of the half. And they go backwards. They had some penalties, and the Bengals just stuffed them after that. And that was just kind of the game right there. The Bengals were able to come up with these big drives in the second half. The Steelers were not. The Bengals moved the ball all day, 10-7, 10-10. That's where the scoring distribution between the quarters was. It was just steady the whole time. The Steelers had a wonderful second quarter. After that, it was tough sledding until the very last drive.
End of the third quarter is what killed Pittsburgh. Like you said, they had the interception. You take over basically at this, I think they're at the 20-yard line of the Bengals, and you go nowhere. You end up taking the field goal. And at that point, it's like, okay, at least we got points. Obviously, you'd love to capitalize given how this offense has worked all year, getting the ball at that spot on the field. It really felt like, okay, if we're going to win this game, if we're going to pull this off, we need to score here. And not only did they settle for the field goal there, but next drive, they get the ball back, after giving up a field goal to Cincinnati, and you end up punting. And to me, that's, watching this game live, it's just like, those are the opportunities, man. If you're going to pull off an upset like this, you absolutely have to get something in those spots. And, like you said, the highs for Kenny Pickett, they're there. You can kind of see it. The escapability, he's willing to throw downfield. He has the connection with Pickens. It always seems to find Freiermuth, who had another solid day, 8 for 79, did not find the end zone, but still by 2022 tight end standards, that's an explosive performance. To me, Kenny Pickett and Zach Wilson, kind of the same guys. I think Pickett is maybe it's slightly higher floor than Zach Wilson, but I kind of see a lot of similarities between those two right now.
Yep, I agree. Pittsburgh goes to Indy on Monday night, so an island game for the Steelers. It could have been worse. This they played this game 3 weeks ago, I'd be dreading it. Now I'm like, okay, I can watch it. I can find something to watch there. Najee Harris looking promising. That was, nice to see him play well. Jaylen Warren got hurt early in this game too. That was unfortunate. Hurt his hamstring. That's something I would not expect him. We'll see what happens going forward, but I wouldn't expect him to be able to go this week. Hamstring injuries tend to last. So we'll watch on that one. Cincinnati side, Mixon had the concussion. We'll have to watch them. Watch that status. P. Ryan, we haven't even really talked about Samaje P. Ryan. 3 receiving touchdowns. The second I go to Twitter to complain about using P. Ryan on third down, he gets not 1, not 2, but 3 receiving touchdowns. Alan Staslawski touted him in sneaky ads last week. I wouldn't say dismissed that notion, but I was a P. Ryan skeptic. Let's just put it that way.
Well, obviously the concussion for Mixon is what kind of pushed this one for P. Ryan. 46 snaps out of a possible 66. Mixon going out early. He only played 14 snaps in this game. So, Allen deserves somewhat of a victory lap, but not too much of a victory lap here, given the injury.
Yeah, Travion Williams looks to be the backup. Chris Evans was actually scratched this past week, was inactive. We'll see if that changes, if Mixon has to miss the game, but Travion Williams would be next in line. There it goes. We'll obviously see about Chase. Our podcasts are brought to you by the Blue Wire Network. Here are a couple of their ads. Big thanks to the Blue Wire Network for hosting RotoWire's podcast. Let's move on. Let's keep breaking down this slate. Let's go ahead and look at the Chicago Bears and the Atlanta Falcons. And injuries are a big storyline in this game. Both Justin Fields and Kyle Pitts coming away from this game with injuries. We're going to wait to see what their statuses are. Fields hurt his shoulder very end of the game. Kyle Pitts got hit hard, had an MCL sprain. We'll see that one too. Let's start on the Chicago side of things. They're not that efficient offensively still.
They just play the same game every week. It feels like, slightly different variances here and there, depending on the opponent. But, once Younghoe Koo hit that long field goal to go up, you're just thinking, well, it's just a countdown until the crushing Justin Fields interception. And of course we got it. And again, obviously Fields, there's a photo of him kind of, leaving the locker room, riding a cart. That's never ideal. He was clearly favoring that shoulder, took a hit running to the sideline late in the game. You hope it's nothing too serious. He didn't look like he was in the highest spirits after the game, but he played well once again. I mean, the offense, if you watch this game, just completely every single thing runs through Justin Fields. The designed runs were there in abundance today. And again, you continue to feel great about the direction that Justin Fields is trending, especially as a runner. The interception at the end of this game, that was rough. Obviously last week, the pick 6 to Okudah.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the Bears have lost 7 out of 8 games. And, now all of a sudden the Lions feel like this ascending team that's stolen all the momentum in the NFC North. And man, this season feels like it's really getting away from Chicago. They got to go to the Jets next week. And especially if Justin Fields, is banged up at all with that shoulder, I think things could get pretty ugly for this offense. But again, they didn't play that well. They still got to 24 points. I mean, that's just kind of who they are now.
Yeah. And I'd argue that this is like, other than the injury, which is really bad, but otherwise, this is a kind of an ideal result. Fields plays okay. He has no receivers. He has one receiver and he has one tight end. We'll see. And Claypool has not done. I was wrong about Claypool being a good ad. He's not done anything.
Completely MIA.
Over. So losing that second round pick was probably that's over. Is an overpay. All of a sudden, not all of a sudden. A lot of people were first guessing properly. I was a contrarian voice and I was the wrong one here. But them getting a top 5 pick is a good result. In a loaded draft, getting Fields some help or getting him, capital to trade. There's a lot of different ways they could approach this year. So we'll see. So you can find good vibes with the Bears, at least there, except if Fields is hurt. And also, this is the type of player that he's got that perfect storm of, great runner, strong, can break tackles, which means he takes more hits, which means he's got a better chance of getting hurt. He doesn't get calls either. That's the thing that kind of is frustrating. I mean, every week there's at least one late hit, one unnecessary roughness hit that I swear should be called. And it just isn't. And other quarterbacks get that call.
100%. Yeah, I think you see it with a lot of running quarterbacks. You see it with Jalen Hurts as well, although it feels like he's started to earn a little more respect this season. But yeah, I mean, it's the hits to the head. It's, Fields he's not a big slider. So oftentimes, he's diving forward. You don't necessarily get the benefit of the doubt there, but he's taking a ton of hits to the head. He's always looking, he's adjusting his face mask. Like, did you see that? Did you see that?
Right.
And time again, could not get those calls. But the biggest play, and if you've seen the highlights from this game, I'm sure you've seen it. Everything changed with that Cordero Patterson kickoff return.
Yeah,
Atlanta goes down 2 scores. They were lucky to hold Chicago to a field goal on one of their earlier drives. Felt like the Bears could have taken this game by the horns had they not had to settle for a field goal on that drive. But they go up 17-7. They have the fumble, immediately give up a long kickoff return to Cordero Patterson. Of course, Chicago then misses a field goal before the half. Atlanta able to tie it up, and you kind of felt like everything had swung at that point. Like major missed opportunity for the Bears. If you get a stop, or even if you just hold them to a field goal on that ensuing drive, it feels like maybe this game plays out differently for the Bears.
Yeah, for sure. And that is the thing. David Montgomery things at average 3.9 yards per carry. Did have 3 catches, so that was that for 54 yards. So that helped. Kmet didn't do a whole lot after 3 brilliant weeks. not totally surprising, and yet I don't regret going aggressively after him in the one league where I saw him available this week. But just part of just a continuing strain of like Jeff does badly this week. I had a really rough fantasy week there. Atlanta, ugh. I mean, offensively, ugh. If it weren't for that Patterson touchdown, I mean, I don't see how this team even like how they got to 27 is beyond me. I mean, I guess it was turnovers and the kick return. I mean, that's it.
It really was. It really was. The kick return jump started everything. I mean, prior to that, the Cordero Patterson had just fumbled, which set up a Chicago touchdown a few plays later. So it was a really rough start to this game for Atlanta, but they found it in the second half. Marcus Mariota, really nice bounce back by him. I mean, he didn't play the game of his life by any means, but he looked awful last time we saw him against Carolina on that Thursday night game. So a nice bounce back against just a Bears defense that is just so exploitable. I mean, the amount of Atlanta's just ripping off 10 to 15 yard rushes with ease against this defense. Like the loss of Roquan Smith, especially against a team like Atlanta, that really showed through. And we should of course talk about Kyle Pitts, who I think we probably won't see again this year.
Yeah, I'm still catching up on how bad the injury is, but yeah, MCL injury there, and it looked bad at the time. He tried, he jogged off after getting his attention, but that was a hard hit.
Yeah, I'm seeing torn MCL, will require surgery. That's the expectation per Ian Rappaport. No timetable yet, so who knows? I mean, it's Kyle Pitts. He's a complete freak genetically, so maybe he recovers like 3x the normal person. But I mean, in terms of fantasy, I don't think he's going to be making an impact whatsoever the rest of the way.
Yeah, and for those people like who see, well, it's just a sprain. No, sprain is a tear. That is just a degree. The difference is in degrees.
If Jeff Stotts has taught us anything, it's that a sprain is a tear.
Yes. He's yelled and screamed and pleaded with us to get that right. So we will endeavor to get it right. All right. Atlanta is every team, by the way, no buys this upcoming week. Every team plays. Atlanta at Washington. Bears, as you alluded to, are at the Jets. Let's jump into the Jets. Why not? I was on the Jets. I thought they'd cover. I was pretty confident the defense was awesome. I feel kind of jobbed on this one, except they scored 3 points. They had 2 yards of offense in the second half. 2. Chris Towers had a funny tweet about like they averaged 2.66 inches per play in the second half. Inches. Not great. Not great at all. I mean, and then Zach Wilson after the game, it emerges like he's thinking like he's blameless from this one there. Yeah. At least that was the interpretation. I don't know if he was, I wasn't there, but it was just, there was a lot of pushback against Zach Wilson after his comment about, no, he didn't feel like he let the defense down. I mean,
how could he? He was 9 of 22 for 77 yards. I mean, he did his job.
Yeah. Justin Herbert had a better fantasy day in 3 throws, in his first 3 throws than Wilson had all day. 75-yard drive and a touchdown there. Wilson, 9 for 22, 77 yards. They had 103 yards of total offense. There's only so many different ways you can go about just discussing how disgusting this Jets offense was.
6 first downs on the day for the New York Jets. These teams were a combined 7 of 30 on 3rd and 4th down. Prior to that punt return late in the game, which I read this morning, it was the latest or basically the first time in like 40 years that a game has had no offensive touchdowns until a special teams touchdown that late in the game. Like this is a once in a generation type of event that we witnessed here. The way that this game ended, 15 consecutive scoreless drives prior to that punt return touchdown. And, 13 of those, I think, were punts. There was a missed field goal, and the Patriots also went out on downs in there. I mean, this was as ugly as advertised. The score reflects it. New England, to me, kind of flashing in and out of this game throughout the day, it felt like the Patriots were consistently threatening. They were the team that, Damian Harris especially had ripped off a couple of long runs. Mac Jones actually played okay. Took some bad sacks, was sacked 6 times in this game.
That's huge.
He might be dead last in the league in terms of like quarterback elusiveness. Like if there's a defender near him, he just turtles up and goes down, like no hope of getting out of it. So that killed a couple drives for New England, but the Patriots were at least threatening. They were getting over midfield. They missed 2 field goals in this game. Ended up, doing a lot of punts from around midfield as they're wont to do, but the Jets just could not get anything going. And the defense keeping them in this was a minor miracle. Whereas, New England, I thought maybe played a better game on defense. The Jets were just in bend but don't break mode for a full 4 quarters. And then, of course, it's the special teams that lets them down.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And yeah, you look at Mac Jones's line until you get to the sacks. You're like, okay, 23 for 27, 246, 9.1 yards attempt. That's what Joe Burrow did yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay, this is good. Okay, 6 sacks, no touchdowns. Okay, I mean, they're just some. It was weird. They didn't turn the ball over at all. It was just ugly. And the win, Nick Folk missing 2 field goals, and that lessens the confidence of taking other field goal attempts later. It was ugly. Ramondre Stevenson couldn't get on track. 15 for 26. Damian Harris was actually the better back yesterday. Not great. At least, again, like a couple of weeks ago, Stevenson salvaged his day with 6 catches for 56 yards. So he didn't utterly, totally kill you fantasy-wise, but, man, just could not get on track.
Yeah, again, I remain just really impressed with this Jets defense. You kind of – it really feels like losing Breece Hall. Like that, they needed him, I think, to kind of offset Zach Wilson and just give them – more of a weapon out of the backfield. My guy, James Robinson, has made like no impact since coming over from Jacksonville. They didn't even use him all that much in this game. Michael Carter, 8 carries, Robinson, 7. Ty Johnson was also in the mix.
I think Ty Johnson had more snaps than Robinson even.
I think he did. Yeah. I'm trying to look up the snap count right now. I saw some tweets about that. So people kind of lamenting the lack of usage for James Robinson, but yeah, I think he was 3rd among Jets running backs just in snaps in this game. And, they didn't give up huge draft capital to get him, but at the time of the trade, I thought he would make a bigger impact. Only played 11 snaps in this game. Did carry the ball, almost every time he was in the game, but yeah, 11 snaps for Robinson, 16 for Johnson, 23 for Michael Carter.
Yep. When you have 3 running backs, you have none, apparently, in this case. Garrett Wilson he went off in the locker room after the game, and it's his turn to be the diva receiver that's upset. Only 3 targets, so I don't blame him. 2 for 12 on 3. Belichick's known as taking away your most important player. It looks like he did that.
Yeah, I think Garrett Wilson, stopped just short of basically saying our quarterback is terrible. I think he was just kind of general enough about his comments that you could talk yourself into him, talking about the coaching staff and the quarterback or the offense in general. But I would imagine that he's not the only guy in that Jets locker room who feels like the defense played maybe its best game of the year and gave the Jets so many opportunities, literally, 10 plus opportunities to just put up 1 touchdown throughout this game. And really at no point did the Jets even threaten to do that. They got the field goal early on, but there was no, it's not like they got down to the 10-yard line and Wilson threw a pick. Like they were just not even close to scoring this entire second half.
Yep, that's right. Both teams are 6-4. The Jets have a get well game against the Bears. We'll see if they can take advantage of that. New England goes on the road to face the Vikings, and I have no idea what to expect in that game.
No, we could talk about Vikings Cowboys, but I think that was such a stunning result that it almost does force kind of an on the fly reevaluation of the Vikings. So I will tell you, our 3.5-point favorites at home against the New England Patriots after being home dogs to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I was so aggressively wrong on that. I made the Vikings my best bet. I was like, they should be favored by 2.5, even 3 maybe, and that wasn't even close. All right, before we start talking about that, let's share a quick note from our friends at No House Advantage. No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform available today. Play in pick'em contests versus other people for the shot at winning big cash prizes. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, and climb the leaderboard for your shot at hundreds of thousands of dollars every week. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20 times your entry if you hit all of your picks. Bet on up to 5-player prop over-unders or individual player matchups across every major sports league, including NFL, NBA, MLB, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR. Sign up now with promo code NHAWIRE. That's NHAWIRE at nohouseadvantage.com, or download the app on the app stores to get a first deposit match up to $25. Make sure to check out No House Advantage today and experience daily fantasy sports redefined, because it's not just how you play, but also where you play. You won't want to miss out on this. All right. I did want to miss out, just much like most of the CBS audience wanted to miss out on the second half of that Vikings-Cowboys game because it was just so uncompetitive.
It really was. And, the Cowboys kind of kept their ones in this game longer than I expected. We saw Michael Parsons exit with an injury late. That was not ideal for that Dallas defense by any means. But yeah, man, this game was over. It felt like by halftime, Maher tacking on the 60-yard field goal on his second try before the half. That to me kind of felt like an emphatic, all right, you're going to make me do it twice, then so be it. I'll just do it again. 23-3 at the half. I mean, the Vikings, Kirk Cousins gets strip sacked on the third play of the game. Just felt like from there, the route was on. And, Minnesota was able to hold Dallas to a field goal on that next drive after the fumble. They matched with a field goal of their own. But, just the Minnesota offense, to me, that was the bigger issue. Obviously, the defense, you let up 40 points, but what a no-show by Kirk Cousins, a no-show by Justin Jefferson. They did get Dalvin Cook going a little bit early on. Obviously, had to get away from the running game as the game played out. But man, this was one of those lines, like you said, that we're going in, we're thinking, what do the odds makers know that we don't? And it's pretty clear that they knew something here.
They knew plenty. I think Kevin Payne actually did the opposite of me, and he made the Cowboys his best bet. So victory Payne there. One of the big things is they did lose Christian Darrisaw early. Their starting left tackle, and they, it's his second concussion in as many weeks. There's no way he plays on Thursday. Just there is a way, but I mean, my goodness, the odds are staggeringly against, and would be crazy to do so. But that means they're kind of in trouble against Matthew Judon and the Pats coming this up week here. I mean, and every time I start having good feelings about the Vikings, they do this. I mean, it's so crazy. Okay, I'm skeptical. Okay, they beat the Bills. Okay, I know that they were lucky in that game, but still, I thought that they proved that at least they were a pretty good team. Now the doubts are all back again.
They have a worse point differential than the Jaguars right now, which is that's all you need to hear. 3-7 Jags, 8-2 Vikings, and the Jags are, I think, +11. Minnesota's now negative on the year. And on Darrisaw, by the way, I mean, they already ruled him out for Thursday yesterday.
Yep.
So they're being,
they did rule him out.
Super cautious. Like you said, never really felt like there was much of a chance that he would play. But I think if you're a Vikings fan, in the back of your mind, you're always wondering, like, is this team actually this good? And then you go and you beat the Bills. I think that was kind of all right, maybe we are this good. Like, we found a way to win a game that we always seem to be on the other end of, for the last 20, 30 years. It's like the Vikings are the team that is finding ways to lose those close games. That to me felt like, okay, we've turned a corner. We've beat maybe the best team in the NFL. Let's keep this rolling. This is our opportunity to prove it. They're coming into our home. We're underdogs against this team that just lost to the Packers. And to just not even make it competitive, that's such a letdown. I think if you're a Vikings fan, like I don't. Now you got to regroup and play a really good Patriots team, like you said. And this is not a team that you want to be facing on a short week by any means. You do get another home game, that's big. But at the same time, man, missing Darrisaw, licking your wounds from a 37-point loss at home. No matter what happens the rest of the year for the Vikings, like they're probably still going to cruise to the NFC North title.
Right.
They'll be in a good spot in the playoffs, but I just think this is the game that's going to stick in the mind, not only of Vikings fans, but of everybody, who evaluates the NFL. Like this is one of those games where I think the Vikings kind of showed their true colors.
Yeah. And no one's going to go into the playoffs, like going on a road game in Minnesota and think, oh, this is a fortress. We have no chance here.
Exactly. I think that,
sure.
And that was a big part of the reason that, people were on the Vikings. I picked them in my pick'em league. I went low, but I thought the Vikings would win. And I'm thinking, this is a real home field advantage. This is not Los Angeles. This is not Arizona. This is a tough place to play. Cowboys were completely unfazed.
Yeah, 100%. Again, Tony Pollard went off. Go figure. The better running back actually does some good stuff. Zeke got the 2 goal line carries, so I mean he did goal line touchdowns, but Pollard still scored twice, went 6 for 109 in the receiving game, including that beautiful wheel route on 3rd and 14. How you finding a way to isolate against the linebacker on that and giving him enough time to throw. Those were 2 big things. I mean, Dak had to hang in there a little bit there, but they didn't quite get to him. In fact, he didn't get sacked once during the course of the day, but him hanging in there long enough to get that throw and dropped a perfect dime, caught Pollard in stride. After that, there was zero chance of the linebacker catching him. It was a beautifully designed and executed play.
That was one of the starkest differences in this game. Watching the Dallas offense, Dak under no pressure, the entire day. He had all the time in the world, super efficient. I mean, he was dialed in. This was his best game of the season, I think, by a pretty wide margin. Really best game in a while for Dak Prescott, even counting a lot of last year. And Kirk Cousins was sacked 7 times in this game, and it could have been more. I mean, he was completely under siege. Obviously, you got to protect the ball on that initial strip sack. Part of that is on Kirk Cousins. He had no awareness that Micah Parsons was coming around the corner behind him. But yeah, this was a pretty shameful performance, I thought, by the Minnesota offensive line, especially after we saw that the Packers of all teams do a really good job, I thought, neutralizing that Dallas defensive front. I thought we'd maybe see the Vikings take more of a page out of what Green Bay did. And, as we talked about on the XM show, the key for Minnesota was the one place you could exploit Dallas is on the ground. And it felt like they did that earlier. And I don't know if the game just got away from them and they felt like they couldn't go back to it, but Dalvin Cook ran well and they tried it early. He only had 11 carries. Again, I know you're down big. You're down 23-3 at the half. It's tough to remain dedicated to it, but much like the Jets, Minnesota did not really threaten to score after that field goal drive. Dallas controlled the clock. And it's not like, Minnesota, you think back to that Eagles game where they're repeatedly getting down, deep into opponent territory and you're turning it over. Maybe you're missing field goals. These were just straight up 3, 4, 5 play drives that ended in a punt.
Yeah, that's right. Minnesota also had 7 penalties for 59 yards. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot a few times there too. If I'm going to pick a nit with the Cowboys, it's that they left their starters in too long. Micah Parsons got shaken up during this game. Okay, he shouldn't have even been in there for that. And then he came back after that? What are you thinking?
That was strange. That was very strange. We saw both Cooper Rush and Nick Mullins in this game.
We did
not
eventually,
until way later. This game was well decided. And, Dak probably played 2 more series than he needed to.
He played longer than Cousins did.
Yeah, unknown reasons. I have no idea what was up there. The spread was well in hand. I don't know what angles you want to take with that one, but somebody like Dak, I don't think he really needs any more reps. And yeah, of course, it felt like they almost paid for it with the Parsons injury, which hopefully is not going to be anything overly serious.
When CBS pulls away from your game before you pull your starters, then you've kind of missed your cue. And they missed. It wasn't like by a tiny little we'll switch it. No, they went 2 series after that, and then they finally switched it out. So it goes. All right, we'll move on to the next game. But before we do that, we've got our good friends at StatHead to talk about. It's easy to find Derrick Henry's statistics from this year. With a quick Google search and a visit to Pro Football Reference, you can see that he rushed for over 900 yards and 9 TDs going into this past week. But that raises many more questions. How many other players have hit those marks through 9 games? How many did it at Henry's age? To answer those questions, there's StatHead. StatHead is your all-access pass to the Pro Football Reference database. In StatHead, you can compare up to 6 players' stats side by side to determine who to start and who to sit, or you can dig through advanced stats to find the perfect player to add off waivers. There is an array of simple tools that unlock an endless number of search options, all using the same easy-to-use interface that you already know from Pro Football Reference. Plus, StatHead lets you browse Pro Football Reference ad-free. Sign up with the promo code RotoWire for $20 off an annual subscription to StatHead. All right. We talked about the Vikings and Cowboys. Let's move on. Let's discuss the Giants, the Cowboys' next opponent, losing at home to Detroit. Ugly game. And this is one of my takes here is this is what happens when when Dimes has to try to play catch up. You're sunk. It's just this is not a good catch up team. They are a front running team. If you look, he threw for 341 yards. Okay, it has 2 interceptions, 2 sacks. Just the interceptions were both huge in this one here. It was not a good game. They couldn't stop the Lions' running game, and they couldn't run the ball themselves other than Dimes.
I thought this was going to be a huge spot for Saquon Barkley. He was way up there in terms of price in DFS contests. Mm-hmm. I fell for the bait there. Did carry 15 times, but 22 yards for Saquon Barkley against this horrific Detroit Lions defense. And, Daniel Jones, like you said, had the 2 picks. Other than that, I thought he played okay. We saw Wan'Dale Robinson have a big day. Unfortunately, it looks like he tore his ACL. He's going to be done for the year.
Yes.
Darius Slayton, another decent day. Obviously, the Giants were throwing the ball a ton in the second half. This, to me, is one of the most surprising results, really, of the entire season. Detroit doing this on the road at the New York Giants. Jared Goff outside, cold weather, bad conditions, didn't seem to matter. I really thought Detroit was, I was going to say a paper tiger. I don't even know if they ever reached that status, but back-to-back wins over Green Bay and Chicago. I think they were really lucky to win both of those games, but this is a statement win for Detroit. And, they're not going to make the playoffs. Ultimately, it probably doesn't mean all that much, but this is a quality win for Dan Campbell, who felt like was maybe close to getting fired 3 weeks ago and now has ripped off wins over Green Bay, Chicago, and the Giants. Jamal Williams for fantasy, obviously that's the biggest storyline. Continues to be very frustrating. If you're a DeAndre Swift owner, he practiced in full last week. We're thinking, okay, maybe the workload tilts back his way. He carries just 5 times for 20 yards in this game, although did get in the end zone.
He scored. He had 3 catches. So, Williams has done his job. It's hard to get mad when Jamal Williams, he's not averaging 5 yards a carry. Yes, he is. He is. And he's done his job. He's done what he's expected to do. Yes, 2 years ago, there was a lot of hype about, okay, Jamal Williams is going to really crater DeAndre Swift's value. And we're like, see, it didn't really happen. Okay, this year it happened. Everybody was right. It just took him a year. Justin Jackson, 9 for 66 in this game. He was running the ball well, too. Like you said, the Giants just couldn't get off the field. This game was, the Giants scored 12 points in the fourth quarter. Really, it was garbage time scoring for them. Wasn't even as close as the 31-18 score indicates there. And that wasn't even that close. Yeah.
Not at all. If you look at some of the numbers, like the Giants had more yards by a pretty significant margin. They had more plays, more first downs, more time of possession. But, a lot of that came late in this game. It felt like it was decided, at one point it was 24-6 at the end of the third quarter. And this Giants team, like you said, I don't know if they're front runners in the same way that the Packers are, but this team is not built to come from behind by any means. And
nope.
Yeah, they tacked on a couple of scores in that fourth quarter. Detroit kind of let its guard down, but it never really felt like the Giants were truly threatening. And again, I've been pretty skeptical of this Giants team. I still think talent-wise, they don't necessarily measure up to their record, but if anything, they had kind of proven that they're able to beat the bad teams, and avoid, thwart these kind of upsets. Again, especially at home. Like, it's one thing if you have to go to Detroit and you get caught looking ahead, whatever. Some of those games happen, but it felt like this Giants team, if they were good at anything, it was very Titan-like. It's like, we're not going to beat ourselves. If a bad team comes in, we're going to take advantage of what we could do against them, and we're going to grind out a win. This was just the total opposite of almost every other game this season. The only other time this defense has been exploited like this was a few weeks ago against Seattle.
Yep, that's right. Jameson Williams got designated to return from IR today. Do you put in a bid on him this week, knowing you probably won't get anything this week?
I grabbed him probably 3-4 weeks ago in one league. So that was kind of my big Jameson Williams stab. It was right around the time we had some optimism, and then, that kind of went back down for a little bit, but he's somebody that will be a luxury on that team. I don't necessarily know right now that I have a single league where he would be like, I'd be slotting him in as a starter whenever he's off IR. I think I want to wait and see. Maybe you need another injury somewhere, but I'm absolutely, if I have a spot on my roster, or you could still keep him in an IR slot for now, 100%. I want to see what he can do.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Especially considering DJ Chark had 1 target. They've got other guys hurt too, but Amon-Ra St. Brown got his 8 targets. They didn't ask him to do much though, because they were winning the whole time. Game flow worked against him in this case. All right, let's move on from this game to another instant classic. Carolina and Baltimore.
Ugh.
Let's just get it out. Let's rip off the Band-Aid, get it done and over with. I haven't done the rewatch on this one here. There were precious few live look-ins on Red Zone because it was bad. It was really, it's right up there with, or right down there, I guess you could say, with New England and the Jets.
Yeah, game started off hot, 6 straight punts, then a turnover by Baltimore to end the punting. This was just a classic letdown game by the Ravens, and credit to them for finding a way to win. We've seen teams have these letdowns against Carolina and not be able to crawl off the mat late in this game like Baltimore did, but yet another double-digit favorite that did not cover. I think it's now like 4-10 on the season or something like that. ATS for double-digit favorites. It has not been pretty. This Carolina team has been on the winning end of a couple of those ATS, and Carolina did not play well. Yeah,
I was just going to say, my God, they did their best to try to make Baltimore cover, and at least offensively. And Baltimore said, nope, don't want it. We're good with 10. We're good with this margin right here.
To me, it was a letdown by the Baltimore offense more than anything. It's not like Carolina was all that frisky. I mean, Baker Mayfield he looked like Baker Mayfield, believe it or not. Had 2 picks in this game, the second of which was extra crushing. Did have one long play to Terrace Marshall. Other than that, this was a very, very limited Carolina attack. I think it was like in PPR leagues, even it was like a 1.2 fantasy point day for Deontay Foreman, who I started in multiple leagues. Love that. I didn't feel great about this matchup, but I mean, it went about as badly as it could have.
Yeah, completely terrible. 11 for 24, just 1 target, no catches. Just there was not much to recommend. DJ Moore is now DJ Less again.
Yeah,
I mean, it's funny. Like, I think Baker just isn't good. I think we got to walk away from this. I mean, he had the 1 half against the Bengals, but he's just not that good. I need to get PJ Walker back, and I never thought I'd be saying that this season, but here we are. I was disappointed. Jeff Johnson asked thoughts on Lamar. Lamar didn't play well. Didn't throw all that well. Had the 1 interception, 209 passing yards. Did have the rushing touchdown, which Drake gets down to the 1, and then gets 1 more running attempt, gets to the half line. I'm on Drake. I don't have Lamar really, except for a best ball league. I'm like, let Drake get it again. Let's reprise the Monday night game against the Saints. Let's do this. No. And of course, Drake only had 2 catches. So it was just bad scores all around. And this game was just ugly the whole time through.
Yeah, Lamar was sacked 3 times as well. Yeah, obviously a very difficult player to sack. So that means a lot for this Carolina defense. And yeah, I mean, if you're Baltimore, you're just happy to escape with a win. That's for sure. But an ugly performance by the Ravens. I thought this was going to be a smash spot for Baltimore. I thought we'd see a letdown for Carolina with Baker Mayfield coming off that win over Atlanta. I mean, I was thinking this could be like 30-10 Baltimore, and it was anything but.
Yeah, I think we can dismiss any thought of Devin Duvernay being the number 1 receiver. No, it's DeMarcus Robinson. Robinson actually smashed.
He did.
9 for 9, 128. Just didn't get in the end zone. Mark Andrews, 6 for 63 in his first game back on 8 targets. So, those guys did their job, just nothing else. There's just nothing else. I thought Isaiah likely could still contribute with Andrews back. I was wrong about that.
He very nearly had a touchdown.
Yeah.
He was running wide open in the back of the end zone. Lamar threw high. So, that could have changed the narrative in a minor way. But like you said, I mean, Robinson and Andrews accounted for like 95% of Lamar Jackson's yards.
Yeah. All right. I think we can move on from this one. Less said, the better.
Please.
All right. Buffalo, Cleveland in Detroit. Started off really poorly for the Bills. They didn't wake up in this game.
Yeah.
They were down 10-3 and Cleveland was driving. They had a drop in the end zone. I had to settle for a field goal. They could have been up like 14-3 really quick. Instead, Buffalo kind of just clawed its way in and they became a running team. My James Cook shares, which I've since divested of, now have value again.
Yeah, I still remain I'm still a little skeptical of the Bills. Like, this was not quite as convincing as you would have liked. Like you said, it was a pretty ugly first half. Stephon Diggs, I wouldn't say he was getting into it with Sean McDermott, but Sean McDermott had to come over and give him a nice talking to on the sidelines. I think at that point, Diggs had not even been targeted. He, of course, did get a touchdown in the second half when the Bills started to look like the Bills, but it was not a great Josh Allen game. Again,
No.
he was really shaky early on. And I think that's part of the reason that they felt like they had to go to Devin Singletary and James Cook. Those guys combined for almost 30 carries in this game. Once again, saw very limited work for Nyheim Hines. He was involved on special teams a little bit, but to me, he kind of looks like, as we called him, a luxury piece for this team, and they just haven't really gotten him all that involved. Only played 10 snaps out of the backfield for Buffalo. That's out of a possible 65.
So, it kind of feels like the Colts, we always thought that, he's getting unlocked. He's going to Buffalo. Colts didn't find a way to unlock him. Maybe he's not unlockable. He's the new Duke Johnson, who happens to be on the same team as the original Duke Johnson, but I don't know.
It's really hard to say. I mean, on the Browns side of this, I thought Jacoby Brissett played pretty well. Did lose a big fumble. That was a momentum changer in the second quarter, but early on was dropping dimes to Amari Cooper. And even late, had a nice throw to Donovan Peoples-Jones, who salvaged a decent fantasy day. He goes 5 for 61 with a touchdown. Pretty disappointing from Nick Chubb. I mean, you're almost never going to see him be this inefficient. 14 for 19. 14 carries, 19 yards for Nick Chubb. Did have 3 catches for 48, so salvaged a little bit out of the backfield, but still pretty disappointing day from him. Overall, though, I know we kind of disagreed on this when we discussed last week. We were robbed. I wanted this game played in Buffalo, and I understand there's a million reasons why it didn't happen, but we went from potentially like this crazy wild environment to a completely neutral environment inside in the dome. So I want to put that out there. This game, I wanted to see a snow game.
Yeah, I think there was still like 50,000 fans there, which is pretty impressive on such short notice. I get it. I mean, who doesn't want to see a snow game? I want to see a snow game too. I just thought this was, 77 inches of snow in certain places. I mean, you saw like all the videos, all the pieces about how hard it was for the Bills to get to the game.
Right.
It just, you're putting a lot of people in danger by trying to get them to go to the game in Buffalo. I totally understand why. Yeah, I have a lot of Nick Chubb. I have a lot of Justin Jefferson. I have a lot of Tyreek Hill. I have those 3 specifically as my top 3 picks in the NFFC primetime, where I was 9-1 going into this week. I'm going to be 9-2 now. Absent like just a miracle tonight, but Kittle's just got to go crazy, and it's just not going to happen. But you can see why it was a bad week for me here. There was a lot of that. I also have a lot of Christian Kirk.
Yeah.
There was 7 to 8 startable receivers on bye this week, depending on what you think about Julio Jones. But 7 clear starting fantasy receivers, and a lot of people were hurting. Scores are down everywhere.
Yeah, that's not even counting Zay Jones either. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you're missing 2 from the Bucks, 2 from the Seahawks, 2 big ones from Miami. Maybe we should have foresaw this lower scoring week, but I think a lot of it too is guys like Samaje Perine, racking up 3 touchdowns. Like, not a lot of people starting Samaje Perine around fantasy leagues. So really weird rostering. Week. Yeah, because we still had high scoring games. I mean, there's been some weeks where it feels like every game is like 20-19. Like, the Bills are in the 30s. Bears Falcons, that combined to go over 50 points. A lot of the late games we had high scoring. It was just the fantasy production didn't necessarily match up with the point totals, if that makes sense.
Cleveland got there late. Otherwise, that was going to hit the under too. But then Cleveland got the backdoor cover and the backdoor over. But we saw the Jets and Pats and Ravens and Carolina. Houston got the late touchdown, but still 33 total points in that game. 33 total points in Indy. It's a lot of ugly early games action there. It was kind of frustrating for me. Let's talk about that Washington and Houston game real quick. Washington defense was the pickup of the week. They got the pick 6. They got 5 sacks. 2 interceptions on Davis Mills. I mean, they just squashed Houston. Houston had, I think, 5 yards of offense in the first half. Ended all hope. A lot of Dameon Pierce managers very unhappy. There's no recovering from this sort of game.
Oh, and I was a little nervous about this when I was on an island. I took the Commanders -3 on the road in staff picks. Everybody else was on Houston, and I get it. Value wise, maybe the Commanders shouldn't have been 3-point favorites, but I was shocked at how easy this was. Yeah, right. Yeah. Maybe they should have been 13-point favorites apparently, but I mean, the pick 6 right away. I mean, that just set the tone from there. Washington, I think, could kind of relax and play its game plan, not feel like it needed to push too much. And, we saw them run the ball 40 times in this game for 153 yards. Not super efficient.
Not all that well. Yeah.
Well, but it was also a game they led 20-0 at the half and just tried to bleed out for the most part in the second half. Yeah. I mean, Heineke, okay, 15-27, 191, no scores, about what you'd expect from him. Not really a huge day for anybody in this game, fantasy wise. Brandon Cooks had a long reception to salvage a reasonably okay game. But Dameon Pierce, I mean, that's the big disappointment. Not that this was an advantageous matchup by any means against a Washington defensive line that, wow, man, I follow a lot of football people on Twitter, and I feel like it's not often that you see defensive lineman highlights pop up throughout the day. And more often than not, it's like, wow, look at what Jonathan Allen is doing to this Texans offensive line. I saw a lot of that yesterday, and they didn't even get Chase Young back. We thought midweek that he might rejoin this team. Sounds like that could probably happen now in week 12.
Yeah, exactly. Just looking like Washington, the defensive touchdown, they had Curtis Samuel with a rushing touchdown. So they ran it 40 times, and neither Gibson or Robinson had a good fantasy day. I mean, think about that for a second. It's just mind-boggling. No receiving touchdowns. It was just it was almost a fantasy 0 game. It just
It really
hard to
was.
do. Joey Sly was your fantasy hero as well, along with the defense there.
Yeah. It's Sly and the defense, getting that pick six. That was big. I mean, that is a defense that a lot of people were streaming this week. So you gotta give credit there. Obviously you're reading into the matchup. But yeah, even McLaurin, I thought this would be a great spot for him. I had him in 2 DFS lineups, thought that he could go crazy against this Houston defense, but they just didn't really need him. That was the biggest thing. In the second half, Washington completely slowed it down. They did exactly what they should do because they knew the Texans were not going to put up 3 scores on that defense.
Yeah, that's right. Let's move on from that game. Just a whole lot of blah. Speaking of a whole lot of blah, Philly and Indy.
Oh my.
Very frustrating game to watch. Ooh. I mean, Philly, like their receivers, Devontae Smith and AJ Brown were winning battles all day, and then they just forget they existed. And they'd run into the pile on 3rd and 4 every time. I'm just like, stop this already. Jalen Hurts got his rushing yards, got the late QB quarterback draw touchdown, which was parting of the Red Sea, parting of the Blue Sea, I guess. But he's going to end up with a decent enough fantasy day because of his 86 rushing yards and the touchdown. But this was not a good offensive performance by the Eagles. Defense really stepped up.
Defense had some huge stops in the second half. I thought Philly was pressing a little bit. I think it was still pretty early in the third quarter. They went for it on a 4th and 10 around midfield. 4th and 10. Yeah. I mean, in terms of field position, I'm okay with you going for it on 4th, but that play just ended up being completely blown up. I think Jalen Hurts ran out of bounds or something. Like it was a rough call, and you could see Sirianni, it was kind of like we talked about with the Packers. It's like you're down 13-3, and they felt like they wanted to score a touchdown so badly that they're willing to do whatever, just throw caution to the wind. And I thought at that point, I'm like, if Indy takes over here and scores, they're going to be in real trouble. If it's 16-3 or it's 20-3, I don't know if the Eagles are coming back. And the defense stepped up, forced a punt, forced a 3 and out. That was huge. They forced a missed field goal on the next possession. So obviously, Philly got it together just in time to tack on that last touchdown. But this was a game that the defense really did win for them after giving up a touchdown on the first drive of the game. I mean, it was right away. You kind of knew, like, all right, the Eagles are going to be in trouble here. Like the Colts are not going to be rolling over.
Yeah, I have on the Sleeper app, I get the Player X made a big play notifications. Yep. I've got 4 leagues on Sleeper, right? So I got the Michael Pittman just made a big play. Jonathan Taylor just made a big play, and all of a sudden it was 7-0. Halftime, Taylor's at 11 for 64. He ended up 22 for 84. They just could not get on track in the second half. Big job by the Philly defense. They got 4 sacks, and then of course the way the game ended. So the Colts had a penalty or two. I think they got sacked once and then had another penalty. It's 4th and 21. They got a little bit of a rush on Ryan, but still, they throw a check down to Deion Jackson on 4th and 21.
Yeah.
Not only that, then Jackson goes out of bounds. I mean, no laterals, nothing. Just
it felt like he wasn't even looking to lateral it. Like, sometimes you'll see that and guys will just realize there's nobody there. I'll just like, he just caught it like it was 2nd and 4, in the middle of the second quarter, like no reaction at all. It was, I'm glad you mentioned that. I thought that was funny watching the end of that game. I think the Colts, they knew their fate was sealed at that point. 4th and 21 with Matt Ryan, not exactly Mr. Elusive, creating time back there. AJ Brown, by the way, another huge fumble in this game. Yeah. It felt like for a little bit a redux of last week against Washington. Philly's driving, for what felt like might be the go-ahead score midway through the 4th quarter. AJ Brown just gets straight up stripped. That
after Taylor had fumbled too. They had gotten their big turnover.
Exactly.
And then nope, they said do not want. It was Philly's kind of missing a little bit of their mojo right now. Obviously losing Goddard hurts. That's a big part of it there. They didn't really go to the backup tight ends. Jack Stoll had 1 catch and on his only target, and no other tight end got even targeted there. So they have to figure out how to replace that still. Miles Sanders didn't get on track, 13 for 47. He did get a catch. Miles Sanders got a catch. Stop the presses. He was a pass catching back at one point in time. Then his second year, he had 9 drops, and the targets have just evaporated since then.
Yep.
Anything else from this game? Sorry.
My only note was going to be the tight ends. You mentioned that. I think you were spot on the XM show, saying that this is just a stay away situation. Like there's not a clear Isaiah Likely who is just going to step in for Dallas Goedert here. I mean, Jack Stoll won the snap battle handily. So if you're if you're really pressing at tight end or you're in a super deep league and you're looking for some sort of value, I mean, it was Stoll, 55 snaps, Grand Calcaterra, 19. Tyree Jackson snuck in there for 9 snaps. So Stoll seems to be the guy in terms of workload, but, he was one target in this game, and neither of the other tight ends were even targeted. So I think this is just something where it spills over to the receivers. It spills over to the backs.
Yeah, that snap count's useful if you're in a 30-team 2 tight end league.
Yes,
so
yes.
There you go.
If you're in a league where you're required to, roster someone named Jack Stoll, then maybe that's valuable.
Exactly. One more game from the early slate: the Rams and the Saints. Andy Dalton was one of the early high scorers at QB this week. Who knew? Against the Rams, no less. 21-25, 3 touchdowns. Did take 3 sacks, and that does hurt. But they didn't turn the ball over at all, and that was big in this game. The Rams kept pace for a while, but then Stafford had the concussion. The Saints had a big third quarter, and actually, this was like kind of in the bag. This was. I was a little surprised on this one. I had the Rams covering. This one is another one I got aggressively wrong.
Yeah, I don't remember where I went in staff picks. I think I do remember saying this would be a 3-point game, and I think I took the Saints to win at home, but I believe we had it at 3.5, and I think I took the Rams to cover. I mean, the one unit that I respected in this game was the Rams defense, and they let him down. I mean, Andy Dalton had been struggling the last 3 weeks coming into this game, and he looked fantastic. 21 of 25, only took 3 sacks, which for Andy Dalton is fantastic. Had the 3 touchdowns. Olave got back on track. Juwan Johnson continues to be sneakily productive. We saw Jarvis Landry get in the end zone as well. The Rams hit a big one to Tutu Atwell early on. Other than that, just an offense that was completely devoid of big plays, and we'll see what happens with Stafford. This could be, if he does indeed have a concussion, that would be 2 concussions in 3 weeks. I know as of last night, he wasn't officially in protocol. Who knows what that means? We'll see. But it's getting late early for the Rams.
Could be Operation Shutdown time. No Cooper Kupp.
I think
could
so
be
too.
No Stafford. I mean,
they're at the Chiefs next week, by the way.
Yeah. It doesn't get any easier, and they're. I still contend it's a tough division despite the records of everyone there. And it's not even Wolford. It's Bryce Perkins is the backup now. Right. And he took 3 sacks and didn't look ready for prime time. There's not a whole lot of takeaways. Allen Robinson had the touchdown, 4 catches. Higbee had 8 targets, so he's still heavily targeted. He still probably will be. The other takeaway is Cam Akers led the backfield this week, 14 for 61, 4.4 yards per carry. I guess he may have some juice. Kyron Williams has some juice, and Darrell Henderson's almost a cut.
Yeah, it's starting to look that way. I did not think we would see Cam Akers back with this team, around like week 5, week 6, when all that was bubbling up. I'm shocked, but that's kind of where the Rams are. They were unable to bring in any other help, and Cam Akers did what he needed to do behind the scenes to get back in the good graces of this coaching staff. And we say it all the time about these bad teams. Like the Rams are cooked. Like the rest of the season is going to be ugly, but much like today, I mean, they're still going to be scoring somewhere between 10 and 20 points most weeks, and Cam Akers is going to have some value. I mean, I think they're just going to slowly bleed out this season, with or without Matthew Stafford at this point. And on Allen Robinson, by the way, kind of disappointing. No real uptick in targets post Cooper Kupp. He did almost exactly what he's been doing over the last 4 weeks. Like he's basically averaging 4 catches and 45 yards over the last 5 weeks. So it's a slight improvement over what you got from him early on, but it doesn't really look like all of a sudden taking Cooper Kupp away is going to mean Allen Robinson is averaging 8 catches a week, especially
when you take Stafford away.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. All right, we got one more note from a sponsor from our friends at Monkey Knife Fight. Football is officially back on Monkey Knife Fight with all the NFL action you're looking for. And if college football is more your speed, they've got plenty of that too. On Monkey Knife Fight, there's no sharks, no salary caps, and no math. It's just easy to play, easy to win, daily fantasy player props. Join now at monkeyknifefight.com and you'll get your first game free. Then use promo code RWNFL to get your first deposit matched instantly up to $100. So what are you waiting for? Join Monkey Knife Fight today. Oh, goody. Let's talk Denver and Raiders here, Nick. This is another instant classic. Went to overtime. I mean, you're thrilled if you have Devontae Adams. I guess, Derek Carr, you're fine with. He did fine. He got the big throw at the end of the game. The Broncos, I mean, they threw on third down with the lead again, and the Raiders out of timeouts. Incomplete pass. Awful. Cost themselves 40 seconds, then called a timeout on the Raiders drive while on defense. I mean, it didn't matter because they were probably far enough down at that point in time in Broncos territory, but especially with Daniel Carlson kicking. But still, just this is just they do so many dumb things. They deserve to lose these games.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I actually thought this was a good spot for Denver. We talked about trusting this defense, as one of the best units in the league against what's been just a terrible Raiders team. But the Raiders have their number this year. They're 2-0 against Denver, and they've racked up a ton of yards on a defense that really nobody else has been able to move the ball against all season. Josh Jacobs has had 2 huge games against this team. And, he had probably the play of the game, late in the fourth quarter, long screen pass out of the backfield, or swing pass, I should say. I think it was Josie Jewell for the Broncos was just horribly beat on that one. And, probably should have set up a touchdown for the Raiders, but they end up settling for a field goal. A scenario that it feels like we've seen from them time and time again, where they have 4 chances from like the 10-yard line and couldn't punch it in. But man, I mean, Denver is just so poorly coached. Like you said, that you kind of felt like that third down pass was coming. Like, Hackett felt like he needed to trust Russell Wilson there. Obviously, it was going incomplete. Obviously, it would have been better to run 40 seconds off the clock. They're just so poorly coached, so poorly managed. We had another huge Melvin Gordon fumble that turned a touchdown drive into a field goal drive. And unsurprisingly, they have now parted ways with Melvin Gordon.
Yep. It's about time. Latavius Murray. Hey, when you got Latavius Murray going 17 for 49, you don't need Gordon around. 17 for 49, 2.9 yards. One of those was a 1-yard run for a touchdown. So, okay, fine. But point is that was just, it was the last straw. It was the last fumble. I get it there. Not much. It's such a narrow tree for the Raiders. Jacobs had all the carries, every single carry for the Raiders running backs. And he had the big catch too. Big week for him. Didn't get in the end zone, but still, I mean, it was pretty good, pretty solid. Foster Moreau had one big play in overtime, that 33-yard catch. That did a lot to put them in that position. And then, of course, Adams just toasted Surtain on the game-winning touchdown. Just toasted him. Great route and horrible support. Horrible, design by the pass defense to be put in that position.
Yeah, he was wide open. Wide open. Camera pans as Derek Carr is throwing that one. And Adams is just running left to right with really nobody near him.
Yeah.
Davante Adams, I mean, if nothing else, he has kind of risen above the carnage that has become this Raiders season. I mean, my goodness, 7 for 141 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's on pace for another just monster season. And, long term, I still don't think this is probably what he signed up for in Vegas, but I mean, the yardage is going to be there. He's 2 touchdowns away from eclipsing last year's total already. And again, I think the Raiders, they're sitting at 3-7. They're probably done at this point. The rest of the schedule is not easy by any means. Your only real quote unquote easy game is against the Rams, and you're the Raiders, so no game is easy. But right. I mean, he's on course for a huge year. So good to see that, if nothing else, for fantasy owners, and also good to see Josh Jacobs back on track here.
Indeed. Anything else from that game?
Not too much. I just, the Russell Wilson trade, at some point we're going to have a long talk on the XM show about where this ranks in terms of disastrous deals, because I mean, this week to week, watching this game, the announcers are like, well, this is far and away the best Russell Wilson has played all year. Oh, okay. If that's true, which it very well might be, if that's true, Russell Wilson, this is where he is now. His best game of the year is 247 yards and no touchdowns.
Yeah, I will say this: no Jerry Jeudy, no KJ Hamler, no Tim Patrick. 3 players they expected to have at the start of this season. But still, I mean, and they chose not to have Albert O out there. I cue up Mario Puig with another rant about that. Anyhow, and I don't think Mario is wrong, by the way. It's just they chose not to have that weapon on the field. All right, let's finish up with the Sunday night game, Chiefs and Chargers. This was fun. This was a fun game.
Really fun game. I thought the Chargers were going to win. I really did. I let myself think that the Chargers were going to win this game. Really good first half by the Chargers. I thought the defense showed up. Things changed significantly in that second half. Isaiah Pacheco, I think that was probably the number one storyline from this game, other than Travis Kelce just being Travis Kelce and Mahomes reminding everybody that he's still the best quarterback in the league. Yep. Pacheco, this felt like the official kind of coming out party for him on a national stage. And, the final line was nothing crazy, 15 for 107. But does anybody, any non-superstar running back that you think of have like that distinct of a running style. Like you're watching him, like he looks different than every other back
He
in the
runs
league.
angry at the turf.
Yeah,
He's like Roy Kent. Yeah. You know that
there's
reference?
no, I do not.
No. Okay. Ted
Who's Roy
Lasso.
Kent?
You haven't seen Ted Lasso yet?
I watched
That's
some
a
episodes.
modern
Gotta
show.
say, I didn't
Okay.
like Ted Lasso. I'm anti Ted Lasso.
Really? That's too
I am.
bad.
I know it's not a popular take. I didn't love it. But Pacheco, man, I mean, he's almost on like a rhythm the way he runs, where it's just like, his whole body is kind of into it. It's like, I would not want to tackle that guy. I'll tell you that. And certainly the Chargers did not want to in the second half, but oh man, it felt like that final score, by the Chargers, which, was set up by that insane throw from Herbert to Keenan Allen, a great catch by Allen, kind of making amends for that fumble on the previous possession. You just knew they had scored way too soon, right? Way too soon.
But yet you can't moderate that.
No, not at all.
This is a huge talking point for me because touchdowns are not a birthright. They're not like a given. When you score a touchdown, you take it. When you can, you take it. I mean, they still got the ball at the end. They still had 30 plus seconds, and all they needed was a field goal. They just couldn't protect Herbert 2 plays in a row. They did this. Right. By the way, on that first play of that last drive, they did like what looked like to be a QB draw. And no, that's not it. Don't do that. I know you had timeouts to use, but it was a down, it was yardage. I mean, they just couldn't protect him at the end. Chris Jones took over at the very end there. Kelsey was unstoppable. I mean, that's the other thing. He beat Derwin James like a rented mule. I mean, it was just, I'm sorry. I'm stealing a total line from Oberman there, but the best cover safety on tight ends got just toasted by Kelsey, just toasted.
Yeah, you're right. I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to say that too. I mean, it was our best against your best. And I mean, it wasn't just that last play, that last touchdown by Kelsey. It was all night. I mean, Kelsey was routinely getting the best of Derwin James, who, it's just kind of crazy watching that replay. It's like all the numbers indicate that Derwin James is much faster than Travis Kelsey, but he could not catch up to him. Kelsey has that subtle get off on the line, and it was kind of, it looked like they were almost running a pick play. They ran it perfectly to the point where I think Derwin James was maybe anticipating having to get around. I believe it was Watson kind of crossing in the middle and just never caught up. And yeah, I mean, that was the story for me. Is the Chargers were, I think, a little bit timid coming out of halftime. They're up 7. They passed on a 4th and inches at around the 40-yard line. They punted, which, knowing the Chargers, they almost never do that.
What did you do with Brandon Staley? I mean, that should be your sign that he's been kidnapped and that's an imposter on the sidelines.
I thought, given the opponent, I mean, okay, I'm looking now, it was closer to the 35. So look, if you don't get it, you're probably giving up a touchdown, but they punted and gave up a touchdown anyway. It's like, it's the Chiefs. Exactly. You're Brandon Staley. Like, this is what you do. You absolutely need to convert this. And they had done well, on 3rd and 4th down conversions, or 3rd down conversions, I should say, to that point. Right. A couple dicey ones, but Austin Eckler was getting it done. He's such a tough guy to tackle. He stays low. Herbert had a sneak on one, I believe, that they got a first down. I mean, I thought as soon as they punted that ball, they kind of signed their own death warrant.
That's some Anthony Lynn stuff there.
It really was.
Sure. Mike Williams got hurt again, made a beautiful toe tap catch, and then limped off to the sideline, was done. So frustrating with them. At least Keenan Allen made it through the game. He did have the bad fumble, but 5 for 94. Palmer, what a huge day he had. 8 for 106 and 2 scores. I mean, that first drive, boom, boom, boom. 3 plays are like, hey, we have Justin Herbert back. And he had a great game. Just couldn't get the time late. The Chiefs adjusted. The Chiefs had no wideouts to speak of. I mean, Justin Watson's out there making plays. Sky Moore made some plays, but they lost. They lost Tony in this game. Valdez-Scantling had 1 catch. I mean, it was just all Kelsey. I mean, it was just crazy. And yet here we are. I mean, the Chiefs they just keep on reloading. It's amazing.
Yeah, that was part of the reason I like the Chargers. Was I really thought they would feel the absence of McCole Hardman, the absence of Juju Smith-Schuster, and in the first half, maybe it felt like they did, but Sky Moore, it felt like all those catches were huge, 3rd downs. They converted a 3rd and 17 in the second half from deep in their own territory. I mean, that just can't happen. Those are the type of plays that it feels like only the Chargers give up. And the amount of talent on that defense just does not equate to the result. And, you only sack Mahomes once. Herbert sacked 5 times. Could have been more. But I on the whole, though, I thought Herbert looked amazing in this game. Outside of that pick late, which was a desperation throw, kind of chucked
under pressure
coverage.
Yep.
It was tipped. It was a diving interception off of a tip. So you'll give him a pass for that. But this is 3 weeks in a row now coming out of the bye where he has looked like MVP candidate Justin Herbert, and he's not in the mix for that award this year. But I think he's fully recovered from that rib injury.
Yep, Chargers fans can be pleased that it's like I love he may not be Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league in my opinion still, but Chargers fans wouldn't trade Herbert for anything. Bengals fans wouldn't trade Burrow for anything. Bills fans wouldn't trade Allen for anything. And we'll see about Fields and Hurts being at that level. I don't put them at that level yet, but I don't know. I might be overstating the case wearing my Bengals black and orange glasses here too. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, I noticed you didn't mention Trevor Lawrence either, but we'll see. You're telling me
he didn't play this week, so I wasn't thinking about that. So yeah, no, I would not. Very true. I would not. All right, let's rip through.
Or go ahead, please. I was gonna say it was just nice to have a week without the Jags, where I could just sit back and know that I was not going to have like my Sunday end with inevitable sadness.
I was that way at the Bengals last week. So I get you. All right, let's rip through these. Jay Red says down 42.75. He has CMC. Opponent has CMC. He has Debo, Mitchell, Gold, and more. Hey, this does not pass the airplane test. Don't throw in the towel. We're not going to do chances to win because that's exclusive province of XM.
Yep.
It's not really, but we're just not going to do it. But don't give up. No. Trade Ayuk and Wilson for Sanders and Cook. Would you do this?
So you're giving up Brandon Ayuk and you're giving up. Let me see. I'm trying to find this question.
You're giving up Ayuk and I'm not sure which Wilson, but
I assume Jeff Wilson. I don't know. Yeah. Sanders and
it's not Zach.
Yeah,
Garrett. It could be Garrett.
I want Miles Sanders. I'll say that. I mean, he's my favorite player. In this trade. Yeah, we need a specification on the way. It could be Russell Wilson for all we know. Who knows? I want the Sanders side of that though.
So I like the Ayuk side. So if it's Ayuk and Jeff Wilson, I prefer Ayuk and Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson's gonna have value going down the stretch. We already talked about Lamar. You guys think Keenan coming back is gonna make Palmer more productive going forward? It's easy to say that after a massive game. I don't think it always plays out this way, but I mean, I think it does help Palmer.
I think so. I mean, it certainly did last night, and Keenan Allen was on somewhat of a pitch count. They were very careful with him, and I think he's going to get better and better. But the more important thing is, at least the initial indication on Mike Williams was he re-injured that high ankle sprain. So I think we could be now back to a situation where he's week to week at best.
Indeed. Matt says, I lost Ertz. Do I pick up Dalton Schultz or David Njoku?
Ooh, I actually like both of those guys. We saw Njoku get back involved. I think I would slightly lean Schultz. There's a Dak Schultz connection. I know he didn't get in the end zone, despite them putting up 40 points, but Dak looks for Schultz way more than Cooper Rush did. I think Schultz's value was kind of artificially lowered early on.
Agreed. I think it's because they put up 40 points. He didn't have to turn to Schultz that much. They just Pollard, and it was just so effective in this game. Last one. Any value with Marlon Mack now that they waived Gordon? The Broncos waived Gordon.
I think there might be by default because Chase Edmonds also left that game with a high ankle sprain. So we'll see what they do to add depth, but you're essentially removing two guys from that depth chart.
Yeah. It just shows how little they think of Gordon, that they in a week where they lost another running back, they did this too. Yeah. All right. That's going to wrap it up, everybody. Thanks for jumping in with us. Team USA is about to start. So we timed this absolutely perfectly. Thanks to No House Advantage. Catch Nick and I tonight on SiriusXM Fantasy during the Monday Night Football game, and take care.